After listening to this podcast, you will be able to learn any skill you want all by yourself. I will present 10 tools you can use to become good at any skill: drawing, writing, swimming, programming, cooking, playing the piano, any skill at all. First off, how did I discover the tools I will describe in this podcast? It was during my years at Art Academy that I realized that the things I did there, the methods applied to learn a new skill, which was drawing, or rather actually they were teaching me to become a painter, could be generalized to any skill. Welcome to Practice Drawing, this podcast designed to listen to while drawing. Please also check out my art flashcards. You can see me use it if you are watching the video version of this podcast. So let's dive in. Tool number 1, curiosity and desire. It all starts with you being completely enamored with something. Maybe you fell in love with a pen drawing of Franklin Booth and want to be able to draw that. Or you fell in love with the guitar sound of Jimi Hendrix and would want nothing more than to be able to play that. A caveat here: I cannot guarantee that you will become as good as the best if you use the tools described in this podcast, but you will become proficient at it and better at it than you imagined you could. But it starts with being completely in love with the poetic beauty of a certain human expression and a desire to be able to express yourself in that same way. What to do? That is what the other tools are about, but it starts with the desire and curiosity to figure it out. For me, it was initially editorial cartoons. I started drawing because I thought some cartoons were just beautiful and wanted to learn how to make them. I soon figured out that in order to be able to be an editorial cartoonist, you had to make yourself angry about something every day, and that was just not my disposition. The past few years have been about Kim Young-gi's art and way of working. I am not alone in being completely enamored with what he drew and how he did that. And so I went on a path to try to figure out how he did that. Desire and curiosity. You start with an interest, maybe an admiration for a person's work, envy, wanting to be able to create that poetic beauty yourself. That desire to be able to create that kind of poetic beauty will keep you going. It will help you push through the boring parts. They say you need to do something for 10,000 hours to become good at it. Well, you won't get there on sheer willpower alone. You need a drive, a desire that pulls you through. That's what the 10,000 hour rulers get wrong. Forcing yourself to push through without the necessary level of desire to pull you through is not going to work. This desire will keep you pushing you to try things that are just out of your reach. It will be the fuel to your growth to mastery. Tool number 2, gather information. The second tool is about gathering information. You gather examples of their work. You gather books about the person you want to emulate, online articles about them, interviews with them. In my case, in staying with Kim Young-gi, I read any interview with him I could find, and one thing that popped out was that he seemed to train by memorizing stacks of images, and then he drew them from memory. Also, when he was in the army, he would not have his drawing tools with him during the day, so he tried to memorize what he saw around him, and then he'd draw what he had memorized in the evening. Tool number 3, copy the masters. At Art Academy, we would literally copy master paintings, trying to also copy the way it was painted. For example, for a specific painting, we had to set it up with a brown umber underpainting, then add opaque lighter colors over it, as the master had done with the original. Many professional comics artists start by drawing superheroes like Spider-Man when they are still a child, and now they are pros. We start by trying to copy, trying to mimic, trying to emulate the person whose work you admire. It is important to note here that you should eventually try to emulate many others and then mix all of that into your own unique style. But when you copy, you learn so much. As an example, I once digitally re-inked a few of Joseph Clement Cole's pen drawings. It's near impossible to copy his pen drawings exactly, but eventually I was able to figure out how he was thinking as he was inking. He used cross-hatching only to suggest certain types of textures, opting to hatch lines in one direction instead. And what I think I figured out he did was that he saw the hatching both as a tone and a texture. He would build up the hatching to get the right tone, but also looked at the holes, the little white spots still in between the lines, forming unwanted textures. And then he added lines to cover those empty areas until he arrived at the desired texture and tone. When you copy or emulate, you get to crawl inside the head of the person you are trying to emulate, and that is far more valuable than just copying their style, which you also learn by doing anyway. Much of drawing, or any skill really, happens between the ears, in your brains, and copying and emulating help you figure out what they thought as they were doing it. Tool number 4, fundamentals. Necessarily, you will hit the wall as you miss certain technical abilities. In the case of drawing, maybe it's about the ability to place lines where you want them, or maybe it's about constructing perspective well, or the human anatomy, composition, color theory, etc. Those are called fundamentals, and you need to learn them through drills, unfortunately. This is where a teacher comes in handy. They can tell you that you need to learn a fundamental you didn't even realize you had to learn. A fundamental you would not have discovered on your own. With art, that is often composition. I think I can see with many self-taught artists that they are self-taught, because while they may have discovered that they needed to train perspective and anatomy, they very often didn't discover that they needed to learn about composition. I find that self-taught comics artists often lack the ability to design compositions effectively. With physics, for example, it's linear algebra. When you develop an interest in physics, you don't discover you have to learn linear algebra. A teacher has to tell you. And you need it for almost all the other subjects, like quantum mechanics or relativity theory. These theories are expressed using linear algebra. It's a language you need to learn before you can speak these topics. Linear algebra is a fundamental of physics. Every skill has its fundamentals. For music, it's reading notes, learning the chords, music theory, etc. If you want to learn a skill, you have to learn the fundamentals. It's often the boring part of learning the skill, but it is crucial. Control over the fundamentals allows you to express yourself accurately. Knowing perspective and anatomy allows you to draw people accurately in space. In music, knowing music theory helps you play well. With writing, the fundamentals are grammar, spelling, as is the theory of story structure, poetry, to learn how to listen to the sound and rhythm of sentences. For design, typography is the fundamental. Every skill has its fundamentals. This is the part where you often do need a teacher to tell you which fundamentals to practice and how. If you don't know to look for the elements of composition, you will miss them and not know you need to learn them. A teacher can tell you. Tool number 5, the Canon and Conventions. At Art Academy, we got art history lessons. When you're enamored with a certain human expression, whether it's a specific art form, style, or musical style, for example, there are genres. There is a canon of the masterpieces you need to know. There are the conventions of the genre which you need to know. For this, it is useful to study the history of the human expression you are pursuing. How did it develop over time? When studying art, it's useful to study art history to learn how we learned about things like perspective and such over time. There are all sorts of hidden rules that people don't notice consciously, but will feel when they are not applied. When making movies, you need to adhere to the conventions of the movie genre. When making music, you have to adhere to the conventions of the music genre. The same holds for art. You fell in love with a certain human expression, and if you want to be able to emulate it, you do need to know the conventions. The audience expects you to adhere to these conventions. Although they will not be able to point it out, they will feel it when you get it wrong. Genre is not about you, it's about the audience's expectations, and you need to know them. Tool number 6, reps. This is the you should draw every day thing. In truth, you don't need to draw every day, but there is a truth behind it. You only get better at something if you practice it a lot. It helps if you enjoy doing it. This is what the I hate writing, love having written crowd gets wrong. You have to love writing, or else you won't be able to compete against people who enjoy it so much that they cannot stop themselves from doing the activity. There was a Jimi Hendrix documentary where you could see that Jimi Hendrix always carried a guitar with him, always ready to jam a bit. That is one important component to becoming good at something. You need to enjoy doing it. It has to be addictive. And it helps if you have the desire, the drive, because you are utterly in love with the output of the expression, as you have seen masters in that skill produce. Practicing a lot makes you better, helps you improve that skill. The next two tools are hacks that help you improve your technical abilities much faster. Tool number 7, hack number 1, slow down. In the book The Talent Code, the writer describes musicians playing so slowly that you cannot hear which piece it is. It is useful to do that because even though you play really slowly, your muscles go through the motions, and because you do it slowly, you can do it in a more controlled fashion and notice slight deviations. You can be more precise as you train your muscle memory. It's the same thing with competitive swimming. During training sessions, you may start with a warm-up, followed by what they call a drill, an exercise that helps you to practice one part of the freestyle swimming movement. Beginners tend to make it a competition, but it is best if you do the drill slowly and in a controlled fashion, so you can correct yourself much better while you're still training your muscle memory. With drawing, that helps too. If you are doing the circles and ellipses dexterity warm-up, it is useful to draw circles and ellipses really slowly and in a controlled fashion, so you can correct small deviations while still training your muscle memory to become better at drawing circles and ellipses. Slowing down helps you become better at a technical skill because you can perform the movement in a much more controlled way, correct it much easier while still training your muscle memory. Tool number 8, hack number 2, make it harder on yourself. The book The Talent Code describes the habit of soccer teams in a country, I think it was Brazil, to play soccer in small rooms. It's much harder to avoid the competing team there, and you learn to rapidly improve your leg work in a small space. Then, when they play on a proper soccer field, it feels like they have oodles of space to play. Regular soccer suddenly becomes much easier. Another example, one I experienced, is with math. I participated in math competitions when I was a teenager, and the thing I remember about that was that the math you needed to master was at a much higher level than the math we needed to be able to do at school. What ended up happening was that even though the math subjects were very different, math at school became way too easy for me after that. What does it mean to understand something? It means your brain accepts a certain abstraction. And for it to accept that abstraction, it needs to be able to handle a certain abstraction level. Me practicing for that math competition, that required a much higher abstraction level, and that suddenly made it much easier to understand the regular math at school, which required a much lower abstraction level. You can make children better at math by playfully having them deal with complex problems at a way higher abstraction level without them realizing they are learning. You don't have to practice the exact math they need to master. You can do anything else. As long as it requires a higher level of abstraction, they will become better at math at school. Children are little learning machines. With a little bit of help, most children can probably easily handle the abstraction level needed at school. With drawing, you can do that too. One reason to draw directly in pen is that it forces you to be more precise and intentional with every line you place. Drawing with a pencil after that becomes way more easy as you trained to install each line carefully and with intent. You can still erase, but the first stab at the line will be much better. Tool number 9, feedback. In the beginning, you will do things wrong. Even worse, you won't even know you are doing them wrong, what you are doing wrong. You won't even know what you don't know. As you start, it is useful to have someone by your side, a teacher or a more skilled person who can tell you where you are off, where you are making mistakes, where you can improve. There can be an extra set of trained eyes for you. Competitive swimming is unique in that you cannot see yourself. You really do need a coach there to tell you where you were off. With a competitive swimming, technique is extremely important. Resistance in water is around 800 times as strong as resistance from air, And the smallest changes in your posture in the water have dramatic effects on you, on how you glide through the water. And the slightest change in movement of your arm has a huge impact on your propulsion. But you can't see yourself, and the coach can, and they can give you pointers. This is easier with drawing. It's not about the posture of your body in the water, but rather about the drawing on the page, or maybe the way you hold your pen or pencil, or the way you move your arm. But these are still things you can observe yourself. As you become better at the technical skill, you therefore become to rely less on the observations of others. These observations are still useful, do stay open to them, but you will find that you yourself notice things wrong with your work. You will eventually even notice things wrong with your work when others don't. The feedback loop is important. Draw something, then analyze where it is off, or have someone help you with that, then devise a plan how to train yourself to do it better. That's how you grow. Stay humble, stay in the growth mindset, don't be upset if you get things wrong. Analyze what is going wrong and devise a plan on how to improve and then execute that plan. The next tool is about teaching, but I should add a caveat here. I have noticed that people who see themselves as a teacher, or rather more generally as a person who gives feedback, they tend to become less receptive to feedback themselves. They get into that, I am a teacher, I'm the one doing the explaining here, and you are the student, you are the one doing the listening. In that mode, and you can't give them feedback if you think they're doing something wrong. They don't want the feedback. Don't be like that. Don't be like a teacher. Don't be in a teacher mode. Next session I will convince you to teach, but try to avoid seeing yourself as a teacher. Editors are like that too. They are used to giving feedback to writers, and so they should know about the value of feedback. They helped writers by giving feedback, and yet they often don't handle feedback on their own work very well. Be careful giving feedback to teacher types. They tend to be in teacher mode, seeing themselves as the one giving feedback. Test them by giving them small feedback first. If they become defensive, refrain from giving further feedback. You have nothing to gain. I started describing myself as an art student everywhere online. I noticed that I found it liberating. I don't have to prove I have a certain skill level. I am just a student, and I am. A quick word on how to give feedback. It is best if you give it objectively. You do it like this. You can say, I see you are doing X. How that makes me feel is Y. And my advice for you is Z. You're not actually saying something about their work, but about how you experience their work. And it's just the fact that you experience it that way. You really see that. You really feel that about it. And that it is really your advice. The trick about receiving feedback is to not be defensive about it, to not see it as a personal attack. The other party is trying to help you. They are giving you advice, information. They are telling you how they experienced what you did or made, and that is information you might be able to use to improve your technical abilities. It's a gift they gave you, and the appropriate response is to say thank you, after you made sure you understood the feedback, of course. You don't have to follow their advice. You are still your own boss when it comes to what you do. The information might be helpful, it might not be helpful, it might be wrong. The person giving the feedback might not realize that they don't understand what you're trying to do. No matter, always say thank you and mean it, because they gave you a gift, the gift of information you might be able to use to improve your work. And then figure out how you can use that information. When you become defensive and start coming up with all sorts of excuses, you are effectively giving the feedback giver information back, information they cannot use. And it teaches them not to give you feedback next time, and you lose a valuable resource that can help you improve. Tip number 10, teach. Having said that you should avoid being in teacher mode mentally, it is hugely useful to teach, to explain things to others. It forces you to put things in words, and as a consequence, you understand it better yourself. You don't have to do it in person. You can create a tutorial or write a blog or newsletter article explaining something, and chances are you come away with a better understanding of the topic. When explaining something in person, first check if they see you as a credible source of information. Two situations may happen. One, the person may simply know more about the situation, and by giving feedback you are simply insulting their intelligence. So find out what their level of knowledge is first. If they know more than you, then hey, congratulations, it is time for you to learn something from them. 2. They are a fellow student and don't see you as knowledgeable and would rather want feedback from the teacher than from you. They don't know you, it's not about you. It may be a prejudice they have against you. You'll notice if they don't respond, and that's fine, but don't waste your time giving feedback to them. This even happens with organizations sometimes. Sometimes they want to know how well they are doing, and in a poll you are invited to grade them. I never do that. If they want my feedback, they can talk to me and I can tell them what I think they are doing wrong. But if they are not asking, they are not interested, and I am not interested in wasting time filling in a stupid grading form. That's one big way you can determine whether people are receptive to feedback. They will ask you. It's a very good strategy to not give feedback until someone asks for it. If they are not asking for it, chances are very high that they don't see you as a credible source of information and that they are therefore not interested. I know it feels like their loss, but they would not be doing anything with the information you wanted to give them anyway. Save yourself some time and spend the time drawing instead. Life is too short to waste time on people who don't appreciate it. But for yourself, try to stay open to feedback from everyone and just say thank you and figure out what you want to do with that feedback. Lifelong learning. I think it's a shame schools don't give children this set of tools that allow you to learn any skill. You can learn to draw, play the piano, play tennis, cook delicious meals, run a business, anything really, by using these tools together. Schools train you to faithfully do as you're told. Be in school on time, do your homework, do that test. All of that is preparing you to be a good, obedient employee. This podcast was about the tools you can use to figure out things out on your own, to figure out how to learn a new skill. Teachers are important. They can tell you which fundamental skill to practice, fundamentals you might not even know you needed to master, and then they can give you feedback on your work, things you are not able to see yet. But a lot of it you can do independently. With the right mindset and the right set of tools, you can learn any skill, whether you show initial talent or not. Thank you for listening to the podcast.